Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Friday, February 6th, 2026.
It is.
Today, we are looking at a figure who, well, he's not just a person, really. He's more like a gravitational force.
That's a good way to put it. A center of gravity for money and power.
Exactly. We are examining a figure who, you could argue, has done more to reshape the physical, financial, and political landscape of the last 40 years than almost anyone else you might just pass on the street.
And it's a name that, even if you don't know the man, you definitely know the name. You see it chiseled into the marble of our most hallowed public libraries.
Oh, yeah.
It's engraved into the foundations of Ivy League universities. And as of just a few months ago, it's now intimately tied to the very architecture of the White House itself.
We are talking, of course, about Stephen A. Schwarzman, the co-founder of Blackstone, a man worth upwards of $40 billion, though, I mean, frankly, those net worth estimates feel like they change by the hour with him.
They really do. And he's a figure who sits at this incredibly complex intersection of, Wall Street money, geopolitical power, and that kind of high society philanthropy that gets your name on buildings.
And the timing for this deep dive really couldn't be better. We have a massive stack of sources here. I mean, a comprehensive biography, financial reports, a whole slew of news clippings leading right up to the end of 2025.
Right. And the reason we're talking about him today is that he's having a bit of a moment. Again, it seems like he's always having a moment.
A moment is putting it so lightly. I mean, just look at the notes here. October 2025, so just a few months back, he was named as the primary donor for a new 90,000 square foot ballroom at the White House.
Literal ballroom.
A ballroom in the People's House.
The State Ballroom expansion, exactly. And it's not a small project. It's a massive undertaking.
And then you fast forward barely a month, and he's at a red carpet dinner with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. It just feels like every time you pull a thread in the tapestry of global power right now.
You find Stephen Schwarzman holding the needle.
Yes, that is the perfect image to start with.
And the mission for this deep dive is really to look at that tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand what it takes, which not coincidentally is the title of his memoir, to build an empire where you control over $1 trillion in assets.
$1 trillion with a T. I just want to pause on that for a second because that number is so big it becomes abstract. You can't even picture it.
It is completely abstract. To put it in perspective for you, $1.1 trillion is larger than the entire GDP of Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
It's larger than the GDP of Switzerland. When you control that much capital, you aren't just a business owner anymore. You are, for all intents and purposes, a sovereign economic entity.
And with that comes, well, friction. We need to explore the controversies that inevitably follow. Because when one man has the power to shape economies, to direct the future of AI research at universities, and even change the layout of the president's home,
it raises some massive questions.
Huge questions about influence, democracy, legacy, everything.
Absolutely. We need to analyze that intersection of private equity, which is his engine. It's the source of all the power in public policy. How does he navigate between making money and making history? Because as we'll see, for Schwarzman, those two things are often the exact same transaction.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this. And to understand the man who buys ballrooms for the White House, I think we have to go back to where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
Because the origin story here, specifically one story from when he was just 14 years old, is honestly the most on-the-nose foreshadowing I think I've ever read. It feels like it was written by a screenwriter, but it actually happened.
It really is. It's almost too perfect. So let's set the scene. Schwarzman is born in 1947, grows up in a Jewish family in Huntingdon Valley, Pennsylvania. It's a comfortable suburban upbringing.
And his father, Joseph, owned a dry goods store.
Right, a linen and curtain store specifically.
And his dad was a Wharton grad, right? So there's already a business lineage there. It's not like he came from nothing.
Right. But the key detail is that his father was very content with a comfortable middle-class life. He had his one store, he had his family, he was happy, he had opportunities to expand, to open more stores, and he turned them down.
He didn't have that. Hunger.
He didn't. And Stephen, even as a kid, could not understand that. He looked at the store and saw limits. He looked at the world and saw opportunities to expand. And this comes out in the lawn mowing business. He starts at age 14.
This is my favorite part. It's so telling. So most kids start a lawn mowing business, and what do? They get sweaty, they push the mower, they get grass stains on their sneakers, they trade their time for $5.
Not Stephen Schwarzman.
No. He realizes very, very quickly that pushing a mower is a bottleneck. It's inefficient. You can only push one mower at a time.
Your labor is the limiting factor.
So what does he do? He recruits his younger twin brothers, Mark and Warren.
Who were significantly younger, which gave him a bit of built-in authority, I'm sure.
Of course, he pays them to do the actual mowing, the physical labor. Meanwhile, Stephen focuses entirely on client acquisition. He goes door to door, selling the service, getting the contracts, managing the books. His brothers are the ones doing the manual labor.
And we have to pause there. We have to really look at the economics of what a 14-year-old just did. Because that isn't just a smart kid move. That is the entire private equity model in miniature.
How so? I mean, to me, it just sounds like he's being a classic older brother bossing his younger brothers around.
Well, sure, on a sibling level, that's part of it. But economically, what he discovered was labor arbitrage. He realized that the value of the service to the client, let's say it's $10 for a lawn, was higher than the cost of the labor required to perform it.
The money he paid his brothers.
Let's say he paid his brothers $5.
So he pockets the difference.
He pockets the spread. He recognized that the real leverage, the real way to scale, isn't in doing the work. It's in structuring the deal. He owned the client relationship. He owned the brand, Schwarzman Mowing. His brothers were just the machinery.
It's brilliant, but it's also a little cold. I mean, I do wonder how Mark and Warren felt about their profit margins. Did they know they were being arbitraged by their own brother?
I'm sure they were paid a market rate for a kid pushing a mower. But the surplus value, the profit, went to the person who organized the capital and the contract. That's the key lesson. Schwarzman wasn't a laborer. He was an aggregator of labor.
It's just incredible that he had that instinct before he could even drive. He understood that you don't get rich by working, you get rich by management fees.
Precisely. And that separation between the operator and the owner is the single defining characteristic of his entire career. So from there, he's on a very specific track. He goes to Yale, graduates in the class of 1969.
The elite track.
The absolute elite track. And he wasn't just hitting the books, he was in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
Which is practically a prerequisite for a certain type of American power broker, isn't it? It's like Hogwarts for future presidents and Wall Street titans.
It really is. It's a network that lasts a lifetime. But here's the curveball that I think softens the image a little, or at least complicates it. He also founded the Davenport Ballet Society at Yale.
A ballet society.
Yeah.
That does not fit the profile.
And I think this is important. We often caricature these finance titans as just number crunchers or these ruthless corporate raiders. But Schwarzman has always had this deep affinity for high culture, for the arts, for aesthetics, for presentation.
He likes the show.
He loves the show.
Yeah.
He understands that power is partly about performance. It's about being seen in the right places with the right things. The Ballet Society then, the White House ballrooms now, it shows he cares about the aesthetics of high society, not just the bank account.
So he wants the world to be beautiful.
Provided he is the one curating it.
That's a great point. So he does Yale, does a brief stint in the Army Reserve, then it's on to Harvard Business School, class of 72. He's just ticking every single box of the American elite establishment.
He is. And his career trajectory reflects that speed and that pedigree. He starts at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Generette, an investment bank. Then he moves to Lehman Brothers. And listen to this. He becomes a managing director at Lehman at age 31.
31. I was still figuring out how to separate my recycling properly at 31. He's running global M&A.
Exactly. He was the head of global mergers and acquisitions. And we have to remember the context here. This is the late 70s, early 80s. The era of the corporate raider was just starting to heat up. This was the Wild West of modern finance.
He was in the heart of it. But clearly, working for someone else, even if it was a giant like Lehman Brothers, wasn't enough. Because in 1985, he teams up with his former boss, Peter G. Peterson, and they go out on their own.
And they found Blackstone. And this is the pivot point in the story. They started with just $400,000. It was a boutique M&A advisory firm initially, just two guys on a phone.
So they were advising other people on deals.
Correct. But they quickly realized that advising on deals is nice, but owning the deal is better.
We're back to the lawnmower. Why just tell the neighbor their grass needs cutting when you can own the mowing company?
Exactly. Why just advise a company on how to sell itself? When you can buy the company, fix it up, or strip it down, and sell it for a massive profit. That is the birth of modern private equity for him. That's the leap.
Okay, I want to stop here and get technical for a minute because we throw around the term private equity or PE all the time. But if I'm listening to this on my commute, I want to know, how does a machine actually work? How do you turn a company into a check for Stephen Schwarzman?
It's a great question. We need to break down the leveraged buyout, or LBO. This is the engine of Blackstone's wealth. It's the core technology.
Okay, explain it like I'm a smart 14-year-old who's good at math.
Perfect. Imagine you want to buy a house that costs $1 million, but you only have $200,000 in your bank account. What do?
I go to the bank and get a mortgage for the other $800,000.
Right. You use leverage, which is just a fancy word for debt,
Yeah.
to buy the asset. Now imagine you do that, but with a company. Blackstone finds a company, let's say it's a hotel chain, that costs $1 billion.
Okay.
They put down maybe $200 million of their own money, or their investors' money, and then they borrow the other $800 million from banks.
Okay, so now they own a hotel chain, but they also have this mountain of debt. Who pays that back?
Here is the magic trick, and this is where it gets so controversial. In a house mortgage, you pay the debt. It's your personal responsibility. In an LVO, Blackstone often transfers that debt onto the company they just bought.
Wait a minute, so the hotel chain now has to pay off the loan that Blackstone used to buy it.
Correct. The company is now saddled with this massive debt service. To pay it off, they had to become incredibly efficient very quickly. They might cut staff, they might sell off unprofitable locations, they might squeeze their suppliers for better terms.
That sounds incredibly risky. For the hotel chain, for its employees.
It is existential for the company. If they can't make the payments, they go bankrupt. But for Blackstone, their risk is limited to that initial down payment. If the company turns around and becomes more profitable, Blackstone sells it 5 or 7 years later for, say, $2 billion. They pay off the original debt, and they keep the massive profit on their small initial investment. The returns are enormous.
So they're essentially flipping houses, but the house has to pay its own mortgage while it's being renovated, and all the people living in the house might get kicked out to make it work.
That is a perfect analogy. And when it works, the returns are astronomical. That is how you get from $400,000 to $1.1 trillion in assets under management.
And speaking of returns, we have to talk about how Schwarzman himself gets paid. Because it's not just a salary, right? The numbers we see are way too big for a salary.
Oh, no. The salary is a rounding error. The real money comes from something called carried interest.
This is the tax thing that everyone in Washington fights about constantly.
It is. It's the holy grail. So typically, a private equity firm takes a 20% cut of the profits they make for their investors. That's the carry. Now, normally, if you or I get a big bonus at work, we pay income tax on it, which can be nearly 40% at the top bracket.
Right.
But because of the way the tax code is written, this carry is treated as investment income, not salary.
Even though it's literally money they earn for doing the job of managing the money.
Exactly. And long-term investment income capital gains is taxed at a much, much lower rate, usually around 20%.
So he's keeping almost double what a high-salaried employee would keep on the same amount of earnings.
That's it. This tax treatment is one of the main reasons the ultra-wealthy in finance are so much wealthier than the ultra-wealthy in other industries. It's a massive built-in advantage.
And looking at the numbers here, it clearly works for him. The IPO in 2007 seems like a huge moment. That's when Blackstone went public.
It was the peak. June 2007. I mean, the timing was just incredible, right before the global financial crisis really took hold.
Right before the floor fell out.
Completely. Blackstone goes public. Schwarzman sold a portion of his stake and personally pocketed $684 million in cash.
Wow.
Just from the IPO.
Oh.
And he kept a stake that was worth over $9 billion at the time.
Talk about selling at the top. He cashed out right before the world melted down.
It was a masterstroke of timing, but it also put a giant target on his back. Because while the rest of the world was losing their homes in 2008 and 2009, he had just cashed out one of the biggest paydays in Wall Street history.
And the paychecks didn't stop there. I'm just looking at these compensation figures from our sources.
Yeah.
2006, almost $400 million. 2008, the year of the crash, he gets over $700 million.
Right.
2017, $786 million. And then even as recently as 2022, he was the highest paid CEO in the U.S. with $253 million. It's just accumulation on a scale that separates him from even the normal rich.
He isn't just wealthy, he is a different species of economic actor. And he has a philosophy that matches that aggression. There's a quote here from 2007 that I highlighted because it really just strips away the polite veneer.
Oh, I know the one. This is the one that always gets quoted.
He said, "I want war, not a series of skirmishes. I always think about what will kill off the other bidder."
What will kill off the other bidder?
I mean, just think about that language. Kill off.
It's so visceral. It sounds like a line from Game of Thrones, not the Wall Street Journal. It's not outperform the other bidder or win the deal. It's kill.
It is. And it contradicts the polished, diplomatic, arts patron image he tries to project now. But you have to understand, in the world of private equity, especially in the 80s and 90s. That was the mindset. It's a zero-sum game. If I buy this asset, you don't. If I win, you lose. He treats business as combat.
Which makes his transition into the world of politics and diplomacy so fascinating. Because killing off the bidder works in a boardroom, but it doesn't necessarily work when you're dealing with presidents and prime ministers, or maybe does.
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's move to that, section 3, the kingmaker. Because this is where Schwarzman's story gets really, really complex.
Okay. So politically, he's a Republican. That's not a surprise.
Not at all. Low taxes, low spending, less regulation. It's the classic wish list for a man with his bank account.
But he identifies as a pragmatist, a center-right guy. He's donated to Mitt Romney. He's donated to Marco Rubio. He even had some positive things to say about Hillary Clinton back in 2016.
He's not an ideologue in the sense of a culture warrior. He's an ideologue for capital. His one core belief is stability for his investments. If a Democrat offers a stable, predictable environment for business, he'll work with them. If a Republican does, great.
But then enter Donald Trump.
Yes. And this is a relationship that has more twists and turns than a roller coaster. It's fascinating.
They've been friends for a long time, right? From the New York social scene.
Decades. They ran in the same Palm Beach and Manhattan social loops. They know each other well. So when Trump wins in 2016, Schwarzman isn't on the outside looking in. He's right there from day one. He chairs the Strategic and Policy Forum. He's the one rounding up CEOs like Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan and Bob Iger of Disney to come advise the new president.
And he defended that involvement really heavily, didn't he? I remember there was a lot of backlash from academics and other business leaders.
Oh, yeah. And his argument was basically, look, having influence is a good thing.
Right.
If I'm in the room, I can give sound, rational advice.
The classic adult in the room theory.
Exactly. You're better off with me whispering in his ear than someone else. But that forum fell apart pretty quickly. August 2017, after the Charlottesville protests, CEOs started resigning en masse, and Trump disbanded it before it could collapse entirely.
But Schwarzman didn't cut ties. That's the key part. He didn't walk away.
No, he kept donating. In the 2020 election cycle, he gave $33.5 million to Republicans. He was all in.
But then came January 6th, and the sources say he called it an insurrection and an affront to democratic values.
He did. He put out a statement. But notice what he didn't do. He didn't burn the bridge. He condemned the specific action, but he was very careful not to excommunicate the leader, Trump himself. He's a hedge-better pun, very much intended.
Yeah.
He always keeps his options open.
Well, the bridge looked a little shaky in 2022. This is the part that fascinates me. He came out publicly and said he would not support Trump in the 2024 election. He called for a new generation of leaders.
Right.
That felt like a breakup. That felt like the entire business establishment, with Schwarzman as its spokesman saying, we are done with the chaos. We want someone predictable.
It did. It felt like Wall Street was placing a big public bet on Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or someone else, someone who wouldn't tweet the market into a tailspin at 3 a.m.
But, and here is the key to understanding how Stephen Schwarzman operates, when it became clear that Trump was going to be the nominee, what did he do in 2024?
We reversed course. Completely backed Trump. He called it a vote for change.
And you just have to ask, why? What changed?
What changed is that the new generation lost. And Stephen Schwarzman does not bet on losers. It's not about liking Trump personally or even agreeing with him ideologically. It's about recognizing that if Trump is going to be the president, Stephen Schwarzman needs to be on the winning team to protect his interests and his investors' interests. It's pure pragmatism over principle.
And that bet seems to have paid off, judging by where we are now in our timeline, early 2026, because late 2025 was an incredibly busy and influential period for him.
It has paid off massively. Let's just look at the Harvard dispute in the fall of 2025. This was a huge story that I think a lot of people missed the nuance of.
Refresh my memory, this was the big standoff over federal research funding.
Right. So you have the Trump administration, fresh into the second term, and they're threatening to pull billions in federal research funding from Ivy League schools over what they called ideological noncompliance.
Basically, a culture war attack on university endowments and what they saw as woke curriculum.
Exactly. And this would have decimated Harvard's research budget completely. And on the other side, you have Harvard, the ultimate establishment institution. They were at a total stalemate. The White House wasn't taking their calls. The academics didn't know how to speak the administration's language.
So who steps in? The Yale guy.
The Yale guy, Stephen Schwarzman. but he's the perfect intermediary. He speaks the language of the Ivy League. I mean, he's got buildings named after him there. And he speaks the language of Trump and transactional politics.
So how did he fix it? Did he give a big speech about academic freedom?
No, of course not. According to the reports we have, he went in and he structured a deal. He treated it like a merger negotiation. He essentially brokered a treaty where Harvard agreed to certain administrative changes, things the White House wanted regarding curriculum oversight and transparency, in exchange for the funding remaining intact.
He treated the Department of Education and Harvard University like two companies in a distressed merger.
Exactly. He viewed it as a transaction. He didn't get emotional about the politics. He just asked, what does side A need to walk away happy? What does side B need? How do we clear the market? To be able to do that, to be the bridge between the populist executive branch and the intellectual elite, that is a position of almost unbelievable power.
And then, almost as a victory lap, we get the ballroom announcement in October 2025. He's named as the key donor for the massive expansion of the East Wing.
I mean, just think about the symbolism there. He isn't just visiting the White House for a meeting. He is physically building the room where the state dinners will happen for the next century. He's constructing the stage upon which American diplomacy is performed.
It's a permanent physical footprint in the seat of American power.
It's the ultimate access. And that access is what allows him to navigate these tricky geopolitical situations. Like in November 2025, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman MBS comes to the White House. This is his first official U.S. visit since the Khashoggi killing in 2018.
A huge geopolitical moment, a normalization of relations that was very controversial.
Very. And Schwarzman is there at the red carpet dinner. Of course he is. Because the Saudi Public Investment Fund is a massive player in the world of private equity. They are one of his biggest clients. Schwarzman has to be there. He's arguably one of the few people in the world who can seamlessly move from a boardroom in Riyadh to a ballroom in D.C.
It's interesting, though, because he's so global, but then in 2025, he was also arguing that the U.S. tariff situation actually gave Europe a unique investment advantage.
That was a fascinating bit of economic 4D chess. He was basically telling his investors, look, the U.S. is locking down with tariffs. It's becoming more protectionist, so the smart money should be flowing to Europe right now.
He just plays all sides of the board.
He does, because he isn't loyal to a nation-state's policy. He's loyal to where capital can flow most efficiently and generate the highest return. He represents a layer of global capital that views presidents and prime ministers as sort of temporary managers. The money remains. The institutions remain. And Stephen Schwarzman sees himself as the custodian of that continuity.
Which brings us to the other way he ensures his continuity, his legacy, putting his name on literally everything. Section 4, monument building.
The edifice complex.
Is that a real term?
It is now. It's the desire of the ultra-wealthy to leave a physical legacy that outlasts their biological life. A building with your name on it is a form of immortality.
So he signed the Giving Pledge back in 2020, promising to give away the majority of his wealth. Great. But his giving, it usually comes with a chisel and a stonemason.
It does. It's rarely anonymous. Let's just look at the portfolio of buildings. The New York Public Library, the main branch on Fifth Avenue, the one with the iconic lions out front. It's now officially the Stephen A. Schwarzman building.
That costs for that $100 million.
Which is a lot of money, obviously. An incredible gift to the city. But also, to have your name on one of the most famous, most beloved public buildings in New York City forever.
It feels like a bargain.
It is a massive bargain. Think about it. That building will stand for another 100, 200 years. For $100 million, which for him is maybe a few months of income, he bought a specific kind of immortality. Every single person who walks past 42nd and 5th reads his name.
And then you have the universities, an empire of Schwarzman-funded buildings, MIT. $350 million for the Schwarzman College of Computing.
Oxford, $150 million for the Schwarzman Center for the Humanities.
Yale, $150 million for the Schwarzman Center, a campus hub.
What stands out to me is the mix. He's funding AI and computing at MIT, the future, the cutting edge, and he's funding the humanities at Oxford, the past, the culture, the classics.
It's a portfolio approach to legacy. He wants to own the future of technology and be the great preserver of Western civilization at the same time.
Exactly. But the most interesting and by far the most controversial of his philanthropic projects is the Schwarzman Scholars Program.
The program in China.
Yes. A $100 million personal gift to create a program at Tsinghua University in Beijing. He explicitly modeled it on the Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford. The stated goal was to build a network of future global leaders who understand China.
Which sounds noble on paper. I mean, building a bridge of understanding between the East and West, especially now when geopolitical tensions are so high.
It does. But there's a pretty significant catch. The source material we have notes that the program has documented ties to the United Front Work Department.
And you should explain what that is for us.
The United Front is an agency of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, and its job is explicitly to conduct influence operations abroad, to co-opt foreign elites and promote the CCP's worldview.
So there's this deep tension.
A huge one. Is he fostering open dialogue and mutual understanding, or is he creating a prestigious Western-branded program that operates under the thumb of the CCP and, critics would argue, helps to legitimize a regime that is increasingly authoritarian?
And Schwarzman would probably argue that engagement is always better than isolation.
Of course. I want war, not skirmishes in business, but engagement in dialogue in geopolitics. And why? Because a hot war is bad for business, especially if it's between nuclear powers. He wants a stable, predictable China because Blackstone has billions and billions of dollars invested in Asia.
Now, we have to talk about the one time this monument building didn't go so well, the Abington High School controversy. This is his alma mater, a public high school in Pennsylvania.
This is such a telling story because it shows the limits of what money can buy. He offered a $25 million donation. Now, for a public school, that is transformational money. We are talking new science labs, new computer labs, a whole new technological wing.
It's a game changer, but there were strings attached.
Like heavy strings.
Yeah.
He wanted the naming rights, not just for a stadium. He'd already done that back in 2004. He wanted the entire school named after him. Abington Senior High School would cease to exist. It would become Stephen A. Schwarzman High School.
And the community said, wait a minute.
They revolted. There was a massive public backlash. Alumni, parents, students, teachers. They felt that a public institution shouldn't be rebranded for a billionaire just because he wrote a check. It blurred the line between charity and privatization. It felt like he was buying the town's identity.
Which is so different from the NYPL or Yale.
Totally different. Those are private institutions for the most part. This was a public school funded by taxpayers.
And he backed down.
He did. They eventually reached a new agreement. The school got to keep the $25 million donation, but the renaming condition was removed.
That has to be rare for him, to lose a negotiation like that.
I think it was a real reality check. You can buy a ballroom at the White House, apparently, because that's a transactional environment where everyone understands the game.
Yeah.
But touching a community's identity, a public school, that's where people draw the line. It was a fascinating and a very public check on his influence.
It really is. So we have the business empire, the political influence, the monuments, but then there's the lifestyle, Section 5. Because you can't have $40 billion without living a little differently than the rest of us.
Differently is the polite word, yeah.
Let's talk real estate for a second. He owns the duplex at 740 Park Avenue in Manhattan.
Which was formerly owned by John D. Rockefeller Jr. Again, he is literally inhabiting the shells of the previous generation of rubber barons. He sees himself as the new Rockefeller.
And then there's Miramar in Newport, Rhode Island, one of the great Gilded Age mansions, bought for $27 million. And the plan is to turn it into a museum after he dies.
Yes, a monument to his own taste and his own life. He wants to leave a Gilded Age mansion behind for posterity.
But it's the resource usage that really gets people riled up. We need to talk about the water.
The water controversies are where the Bond-villain comparisons really start to gain some traction.
I honestly gasped when I read the details on the UK incident. So let's set the scene. It's 2025. The UK is in the middle of a severe drought.
A very severe drought. Hosepipe bans are in effect across the country. People can't water their gardens or wash their cars. It's a national conservation effort.
And Schwarzman owns Conholt Park, a 2,500-acre estate in Wiltshire. And on this estate, he has a private lake.
A man-made ornamental lake. And it was getting low because of the drought. So what does he do? He doesn't wait for rain. He hires a fleet of commercial water tankers.
Like big semi-trucks?
Massive industrial tankers. He had them driving back and forth from Hampshire, a neighboring county that wasn't under the same strict restrictions, siphoning water from their supply to truck over to Wiltshire to fill his private lake.
He trucked in a lake.
While the locals were watching their vegetable patches die. I mean, just imagine the visual. You are a local resident, you're doing your civic duty by conserving water, and you watch a convoy of heavy-duty trucks rumble past your house day after day, burning diesel, just so a billionaire's view remains picturesque.
It feels like a caricature of a supervillain. Why do it? Why not just let the lake level drop for a few months? It's just a view.
Because to a man like Stephen Schwarzman, a dropping lake level looks like mismanagement. It looks like a failure of control. His entire life is built on controlling the environment, whether it's the financial markets, the political landscape, or the view from his window. Accepting the drought means accepting that nature has power over him. And I don't think he accepts that.
It's the God complex applied to landscaping.
It is. And it backfired spectacularly. The local water authority, Southern Water, had to step in and explicitly ban the tankers from taking the water. It wasn't just a regulatory move. It was a public shaming. It was society saying, there are some things you cannot buy. The water table is not a private asset.
But this wasn't a one-off, right? Earlier, in 2011, he did something similar in Palm Beach. Used 7.4 million gallons of water in a single year during a drought.
Which was 70 times the average resident.
It just shows a consistent mindset. Resources are there to be acquired. If you can pay for the water, why shouldn't you have it? It's a market-based approach to nature.
Which puts him directly at odds with the concept of the public good, which views water as a shared essential resource.
And speaking of things that don't look good, we have to address the Epstein connection. The source material is very specific here. His name appears in Jeffrey Epstein's files 179 times.
Right. And we have to be extremely precise here. Being in the flight logs or the contact books does not prove a specific crime. It does not mean he was a co-conspirator.
Still not a conviction.
Absolutely not. But the sheer volume, 179 times, indicates a significant degree of social and professional overlap. It wasn't just meeting him once at a fundraiser.
No.
It places him firmly in that social circle of the ultra-wealthy where Epstein operated for decades. It suggests that Epstein was a part of the ecosystem that Schwarzman inhabited.
Right.
And it's a stain that no matter how many libraries you build or universities you fund, is hard to scrub out entirely. It lingers.
It adds a deep shadow to the legacy. And then there are the gaffes, the verbal missteps. We mentioned the kill the bitter quote, but there was another one in 2010 that was even worse. This one actually made me cringe when I read it.
The infamous war analogy.
Yeah. He was talking about President Obama's plan to raise taxes on carried interest, that tax loophole we discussed earlier, and he compared it to, well, can you read the quote?
He said, it's a war. It's like when Hitler invaded Poland in 1939.
Comparing a proposed tax hike to the invasion of Poland, to the start of World War II.
It was incredibly tone-deaf and offensive. He apologized later, profusely, but it revealed something deep about his psyche. It revealed how existentially threatened he felt. You have to understand that carried interest loophole is the golden goose. It is the fundamental mechanism of his wealth. Obama threatening that felt, to Schwarzman, like an attack on his entire way of life.
So his brain went to the most extreme, hyperbolic metaphor possible.
Right. It showed a shocking lack of perspective. But here is the ultimate irony. 2 years later, in 2012, President Obama is facing the fiscal cliff budget crisis. He needs to broker a deal with Republicans. And who does he call for help?
He calls Stephen Schwarzman.
He calls the guy who compared him to Hitler. And why? Because at the end of the day, money talks louder than gaffes. Obama needed Wall Street on board to get a deal done, and Stephen Schwarzman is Wall Street.
That is the recurring theme here, isn't it? No matter what he says, no matter how much water he uses, no matter who he supports politically, the phone keeps ringing. The powerful keep calling him.
Because he has made himself indispensable. He has woven Blackstone and his own personal influence into the fabric of the global economy so tightly that you can't really pull him out without unraveling the whole thing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, how do we synthesize this? We have a man who facilitates cutting-edge AI research and restores beautiful public libraries. And we have a man who trucks in water for private lakes and compares tax policy to World War II.
A man who advises Donald Trump, dines with MBS, and helps Barack Obama avoid a financial crisis. He's all those things at once.
He is the ultimate fixer for the status quo.
That's a great way to put it. He isn't a disruptor, really. He's a stabilizer. He works with whoever is in power, be it Trump, Biden, Obama, or the CCP, to ensure that the environment remains favorable for capital accumulation.
He's the ballast in the ship of state.
Exactly. And sometimes that ballast is ugly, sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it feels deeply unfair. But the ship relies on it. He embodies the central contradiction of modern capitalism. It produces incredible wealth that can build universities and cure diseases, but it also concentrates power in the hands of people who think they can buy the weather.
It's a lot to process. You know, you look at the Stephen A. Schwarzman building at the New York Public Library, and on the surface, it looks like a simple, generous gift to the city. But after today, I think I'll look at those engraved letters a little differently.
You should. You should look at them and ask, what was the trade? What was the deal? Because with Stephen Schwarzman, there's always a deal.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. We've talked about the billions, the ballrooms, the controversies, but here is a final thought to chew on as we close out.
We spend so much of our time, our energy, arguing about red versus blue, Democrats versus Republicans, the culture wars on the left versus the culture wars on the right.
Right.
But Schwarzman's career suggests that those distinctions are surprisingly fluid, almost irrelevant when you get to the very top of the pyramid.
He moved from potentially supporting Hillary to funding Trump, from condemning January 6th to backing the GOP again, from warning about U.S. tariffs to profiting from them by pivoting to Europe.
Exactly. So the provocative thought is this. In a world of intense political polarization, is the party of money the only true consistent political party, the one party that transcends all others? And if so, are we all just living in their world, renting space in their ballrooms?
Something to think about the next time you walk past a building with a billionaire's name on it. Look deeper. Look for the deal that put it there. That's it for this week's Deep Dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Keep asking questions.